Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Pontiac Enchanté. The introductory clip that you just saw was maybe a bit of wishful thinking on our part. We had a good friend of ours, Ben Stanland, take that wonderful drone footage of the property where we are right now back in the summertime when it looked like that. It doesn't really look like that today. It's a very, very gusty day here. We wish there was at least some snow, but it's just freezing cold, extremely windy, and rather dark. So just a short disclaimer before we start that sometimes in these very windy conditions, this area of the Pontiac loses power. So if your screen goes totally dead, that's probably because we've lost electricity. And I think it's just worth saying that just so you don't think that something has happened on your end. And in that case, I'll post something on our Facebook page saying that we've lost power. It's unlikely, but I just wanted to begin with that disclaimer. So as I said, welcome. My name is Carson Becky. I'm the artistic director of Pontiac Enchanté. Bienvenue à notre invité francophone ici à la Venturing Hills Concert Studio. Today's concert features Meagan and Amy, and I know Meagan and Amy have followers all across the country, so I'd like to welcome our viewers joining us today from Saskatchewan. I think we have some viewers in BC, potentially in Manitoba, and I know we have a few viewers today as well in the United Kingdom. So welcome to everybody, wherever you are in the world, here to Luskville, Quebec. You're all watching today's concert on our virtual concert hall, which is the platform that we use to broadcast our live stream concerts. There's a few features in the virtual concert hall that will allow you to enjoy this concert fully. So let me just take you through some of those features that are available to you. First of all, on the left-hand side of the media viewer, there's a button that says Download Concert Program. I'd encourage you to click on that, and a separate window will pop up that will show you today's concert program. It's especially important because we have pieces being played today with specific titles, and I think knowing those titles will definitely enhance your enjoyment of the pieces. You can also make sure that they're actually playing the pieces they say they're playing, and they're not just kind of going off-piste. On the second page of that program, you can read both Amy and Meagan's biographies as well. If you have two devices, so if you have a phone or an iPad as well as your computer, or if you're one of these people that has two monitors, you can open up the program on a different monitor so you're able to watch the concert on one and keep track of the program on the other. So I'd encourage you to download the program for the concert. On the right-hand side of the viewing platform, you'll see a button that says Donate, and I would encourage every single person to click on that button. We run these concerts for free. You're watching right now at no charge, but we rely on donations to keep these concerts going. We would normally charge a ticket price of $30 when it's not the middle of a global pandemic and we can have audiences here in person. But online, we figured that it's easier to operate on a donation platform. So if you're so inclined and if you enjoyed today's program, please leave a donation of any amount that you'd like. I've recommended $20 and $30 as potential targets. So $20 is the price for a student admission or for youth, and $30 is just the standard admission price. So at the end of the program or anytime during, feel free to click on the donate button and give generously, please. Thank you very much for that. If you hover your mouse button over the media viewer, you'll see a little square in the bottom right-hand corner of the window. If you click on that square, the picture will go to full screen and you'll have a much more immersive experience watching. I would also encourage you to use the volume controls. The sound will be quite loud on purpose so that if you need to, you can put the volume down, but we don't want you to have hearing damage from today's concert. So please feel free to adjust the volume to listen at a level that's comfortable for you. It's one thing to put on concerts when the world is operating as normal. It takes a lot of people and a lot of energy and a lot of time to run a concert series. It's a whole different kettle of fish when we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I'd just like to say a few thank yous to people that have made our concerts today possible. Just people and organizations that have contributed something that let us do what we're doing here. So you'll notice that I'm very well lit right now. You're not going to see those lights, but we have an excellent set of professional stage lighting equipment that have been given to or donated to us by the Mill Road Community Center in Old Chelsea. Mill Road runs an excellent concert series of their own, which they're not able to do right now, so they very generously lent us this lighting to make sure that these shows could be well lit. So a huge thank you to Mill Road. I know right now that you can hear me very clearly, and that's in large part, in sole part, to our excellent sound engineer, Ross Murray, who lives in Wakefield, Quebec, and has been doing the sound for these concerts since October. So a huge thanks to Ross for everything he does to make the sound on these concerts work. It's essential when you're putting on a live stream concert that internet connection on both ends be strong, but especially on the end that's broadcasting. And if you're broadcasting a concert from the middle of a city, that's one thing. Internet connections in the city are usually very strong. It's a whole different thing when you're broadcasting from the countryside. So I would just like to say a big thank you to Cliff Bellis at Pioneer Wireless, who did a lot of work to make sure that we could have the highest bandwidth possible here to consistently broadcast our concerts at high quality. So a huge thank you to Cliff for the quite considerable task of bringing high-speed internet out to our little corner of the world here. So a big thank you to Cliff for that. You'll notice that the piano that Meagan is going to play is impeccably well kept and in very, very good condition tuning-wise. That's completely thanks to Troy Scharf and 88 Keys Piano Tuning. Troy comes here to tune at literally any time of the day and night, depending on what needs to be done. So I can't thank Troy enough for the care he takes to make sure that our pianos are in the best condition possible. You're not going to see this person because he's ensuring that you can see me. My brother Tate Becky is the co-director of this series and is the person operating the cameras today. Tate and I have been working on this series together since 2017, and his technical expertise has been especially valuable now that we're operating on this live stream platform. So a huge thank you to Tate for his camera work today, but for everything that he brings to the technical side of this concert series. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to my parents, Peter and Debbie, whose property we're on today. It's one thing, as usual, to welcome people when you're not in the middle of a global pandemic, but it takes a lot of faith to trust that we'll do things safely and keep things working when we're in the middle of a pandemic. So a huge thank you to them for this space and for letting us put on our concerts on this property. So again, a thank you to everybody above for everything they've done to make today's and this series in general possible. Now, I have to say an even bigger thank you to our sponsors. At the beginning of the pandemic, we really didn't know what was going to happen. The lockdowns began in mid-March, and our first concert of 2020 was scheduled for the end of March. So that concert, of course, had to be canceled. And at that point, I contacted all of our season sponsors and said, look, I really don't know what's going to happen this year. We might be able to put on concerts, we might not, we don't know. So, what would you like to do? And I totally understand if you would like to withdraw your support from this year and let's just talk again in 2021. And not a single one of our sponsors withdrew their support. They all said, look, we don't know what's going to happen either, but we think you'll figure something out, so we're very happy to continue our support. And I'm so grateful that they did that, because all the equipment that we're using today would not have been possible without their very generous support. So I would just like to go through and thank all of our sponsors personally, because they have made a huge difference to what we do here. So starting with Mark, Jenna, and Deb Rondell at the RBC Rondell Wealth Management Group. Thank you for your support since the beginning of this concert series in 2009, and especially thank you for your support this year. A very special welcome today, and a huge thanks to Miss Dasha Schenkman, who's watching today's concert from her home in London, England. Dasha, I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. You've seen almost all of the concerts that we've put on in 2020 thanks to this live stream platform. So it's a pleasure to have you back again this afternoon, and a huge thank you for your support for this concert series. I know that Marg Campbell is also watching today. Marg has been a supporter of the series for a few years. I'm used to seeing her at the top of the stairs in the hall, where she has hardly missed a single concert. So this is a totally different experience, but Marg, thank you for your continued support, and thank you for continuing to watch on this live stream platform as well. I have to say another big thank you to Norton Rose Fulbright, the law firm that has continued their support of the series this year, and to the Desjardins Caisse Populaire Bank here in Luskville, who has helped us make quite a few facility improvements over the years as well. So a big thank you to them. And finally to Bob and Sandra Barber, who live locally here in Luskville and have been coming to our concerts since they moved to the area a few years ago. Bob and Sandra are not the biggest fans of the digital platform, but I think it's a great show of their support that even still they decided to continue their support. And Bob and Sandra, I really appreciate that gesture, and I can't wait to be able to welcome you back here in person. So a huge thank you to all of our 2020 season sponsors for making this possible. It's actually very easy. If this is your first time watching one of our concerts, well, first of all, welcome to Pontiac Enchanté. If you'd like to come back to a concert, which I would highly recommend, the best way to keep in touch with us is to join our emailing list. So watching on our virtual platform, it's quite an easy thing to do. You'll see a little orange box in the top right-hand corner of your window that says join our mailing list. And not surprisingly, if you click on that button, it will take you to a form in which you can leave us your email and your name. And we send out emails before every concert saying what's being played, a few things about the program, and especially now it's important because we don't know until a few days in advance whether we're going to be able to issue in-person tickets or not. So if you're not already on our mailing list, it doesn't matter where you are in the world because our concerts are now available online. Please join that list, and that will be the best way to keep in touch with us about what we have coming up next. We also have a Facebook page, so if you're on Facebook, follow us there, and we also post information about our upcoming concerts on Facebook. In terms of upcoming concerts, we have something very exciting to announce this weekend, in that our 2021 concerts are now available for you to look at to see what we've got coming up. Usually we would program a whole year in advance. We would program concerts from January through December, but we really don't know what next year is going to look like. So what we decided to do is to break the year into 3 chunks. And so we've programmed from January through April. So those 4 concerts are available on our website now. If you click on the concerts button at the top of the page and click on 2020-2021 concerts, you'll see what we have coming up from January through April. There are sort of 3 conditions that I wanted to have met for artists playing next year. Just because of the very particular situation that we're in the world right now. So those 3 conditions are, first of all, that we're only booking artists in groups of 3 or less. Just because of social distancing regulations, we can't have more people than that in this stage area being reasonably filmed by 4 cameras. Second of all the artists will come from the Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto corridor. Travel from any farther than that just starts to become an issue, and we want to make sure that none of our concerts have to be cancelled due to any travel restrictions. So all of our artists come from that area, that geographic area. And finally, the arts sector, like every other sector, has been badly hit by the pandemic, but in particular, freelancers have had a real struggle. If you play for an orchestra, you still have a salary that is paid to you despite concerts not happening in the same way. But if you are a freelancer and you rely on playing concerts in venues around the country, you have been more impacted than others in the sector. So we're only booking artists who make most of their money from freelance work. So all the musicians that you'll see playing here from January through April are primarily freelancers and need work like this to make their lives work. So those were the 3 things that we decided were really important for booking artists next year. Having said that, we still have 1 concert left in 2020, and that's the concert that you're about to see. This is a very special concert in that we're partnering with the Silva Gelber Music Foundation to put on today's concert. The Silva Gelber Music Foundation, you're going to hear more about them about halfway through today's program. I've interviewed Barbara Laskin, the executive director of the foundation, so she and I will talk a bit about what the program is, what the foundation does, and things like that. But we've been collaborating with them since 2016 to put on concerts. So in the past, what we've done is we've brought together Canadian musicians living across Canada and farther abroad. We've brought them here to Luskville, and the idea was to form partnerships by musicians who hadn't previously met and maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet professionally. And the idea was that those partnerships could then go on to further artistic creations beyond Pontiac Enchanté. This year we couldn't really do that because that's the whole point of the pandemic, is that you're not really seeing people who are outside your bubble, so people you've never met are probably not in your bubble. So we went a different direction, and we decided to bring Amy and Meagan, or Meagan and Amy is the duo name, who have been playing together for many years, are both Silva Gelber Foundation award winners. And at the beginning of the pandemic, Meagan and Amy were nearly finished a cross-Canadian tour. They'd played in all 10 provinces. They'd played something like 43 out of 50 concerts scheduled on that tour. And one of the concerts that they weren't able to play was scheduled for Old Chelsea, Quebec, which was meant to be their National Capital Region concert. So it seemed like an additionally good reason to bring them here today to address that concert they weren't able to play back in May. And so I'm delighted that they're going to be here to play in the National Capital Region today. Meagan and Amy are both from Saskatchewan. They met when they studied at McGill University as undergraduate students, and they've been playing as a duo ever since. So I'm delighted to welcome Meagan Milatz and Amy Hillis. Before we start with the music, we're going to get a little introduction from Jocelyn Morlock, the composer of actually the second piece on the program. And then Meagan will play for you, and then you'll see the full duo. So thank you all very much for coming today, and welcome to Pontiac Enchanté.
Hi there, my name is Jocelyn Morlock, and I'm the composer of the next piece, Alba. Alba was written for Meagan and Amy for their 2019 Canadian tour as a companion piece to the Mozart violin and piano sonatas. The word Alba has a number of associations that I found appealing and inspiring while writing. Those who enjoy a good pun will note that the name Alba sounds suspiciously and intentionally reminiscent of Albert E. Pace. In writing a companion piece for Mozart, I used the building blocks of his music trills, ornaments, triadic harmony, and especially the Alberti bass, so often found in the left hand of his piano music, to develop my own work. Small, regular ripples of melody that are initially created using these figures become faster, more irregular, and even distorted by wide leaps and bounds, but retain traces of their origins, even at their most exuberant. The word alba is both Spanish and Italian for dawn. An alba is also a type of lyric poetry traditionally Provençal, about lovers who must part at dawn. Finally, there are alba roses, a shrub rose with beautiful white sweet-scented flowers. When I was writing Alba, during the very longest days of summer, I found that all my musical ideas had a strong association with dawn and renewal. Alba is a very sunny and optimistic piece, which begins quite gently but becomes increasingly heated and energetic over its brief duration. During these shortest days of winter 2020, I'm looking forward with optimism to when the days once again begin to lengthen.
Welcome to all of our amazing listeners across Canada and the world. We're so happy to be here today. And just before Amy and I jump in to Alba by Jocelyn Morlock, I will prelude us in a little bit. So the traditional usage of preludes was meant as an introduction. So these three preludes that I'll perform for you by Chopin are intended to set the mood and prepare your ears for some of the characters that you'll hear both in Alba and throughout the concert this afternoon. So hope you enjoy these three preludes by the poet of the piano, Frédéric Chopin. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Alba is a piece that is very near and dear to our hearts because, as Jocelyn mentioned in her introduction, this is a piece that was written for our Pan-Canadian tour over the last year, and so we got the chance to perform this brand new piece 43 plus times. And we had the chance to meet Jocelyn in person in Vancouver as well. And that was just such a pleasure. So it was really fun also to watch her little video and kind of reconnect with her for this concert today in a virtual way. So it's become a bit of a thing for Amy and I to always tend to program a Mozart sonata somewhere in our concerts. I mean, I'm sure there will be a concert in the future where we don't have a Mozart sonata on there, but so far it's been on every single one, I think, that we've performed, pretty much. So while we were kind of on the road throughout the last year, we had a lot of fun kind of scheming about our programming plans for the future. And of course, so we had to go through and listen to all the Mozart sonatas and figure out which one we wanted to do next. And the D major sonata that you're about to hear came up, and we both just kind of looked at each other and said, this is the one. It's pretty obvious. We love this D major sonata because it immediately kind of grabs the listener's attention with its brilliance and its orchestral textures and exuberance, and it reminds us a lot of sort of a concerto, really, for both instruments, which we'd never really come across before. There's this amazing cadenza at the end, which normally is reserved for a soloist in a concerto setting with orchestra, but now in this sonata, this is the only piece that I know of that has something like this, but it's a dual cadenza, so we'll be improvising together. So we hope that you enjoy this exciting Mozart sonata, and we're thrilled to be able to learn another of his sonatas. We'll get through all of them at some point.
I'm very happy to be joined now by Barbara Laskin, who is the executive director of the Silva Gelber Music Foundation. Barbara has been a friend for a long time. She has been the executive director of the foundation for many years and previously worked with the Canada Council for the Arts as a program director in the dance sector. So she has a long history in arts administration. So Barbara, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, this evening.
Carson, it's my pleasure to be with you always.
Well, I just thought we could talk a little bit about the Silva Gelber Music Foundation, and maybe we could start with, if you just tell us what it is that the foundation does.
Okay, well, it's pretty simple, actually. The foundation is there to support young Canadians and permanent residents of Canada who are on the cusp of a professional career. So it's to take them that step to bridge their studies and their working as young professionals around the world, really.
Okay. And actually, there are so many musicians around the world. You and I were talking about this earlier. So many musicians around the world that come from Canada that have benefited from the support of the foundation. What you guys do really makes a big difference to musicians' lives. But I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how the foundation started. Maybe a bit about who Silva Gelber was and what the genesis of the foundation has been since its inception.
Well, Silva Gelber, a number of people who attend your concerts, Carson, would have known her because she was a prominent figure in the National Capital Region. She was a very colorful character. She died in her late 90s in about 2003, I think is when she died.
Okay.
But she was really the first woman to rise to a senior position in the federal public service. And specifically, she became the director of the Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor. So she ushered in things like pay equity and mat leave, maternity leave, and pension benefits for women, that kind of thing. So she was a kind of early feminist. I don't know that she would have applied that label to herself, but she was. She was subsequently appointed as Canada's rep to the United Nations Commission for the Status of Women, which she did for 4 years in the early 70s. And then subsequent to that, she was our delegate to the UN General Assembly in 1976 and 78. So she was a very interesting, prominent person.
Yeah.
She had two major passions in life, visual art and music. And her house was filled with musical instruments. She was an amateur musician herself. And she played, all kinds of things. She had a piano and she had a xylophone and she had drums and she had all kinds of stuff. She used to record herself singing along to, what are those, that series of records that?
Oh, Music Minus One.
Music Minus One. She did a whole bunch of those recordings. And she always carried in her handbag a little 1-inch harmonica.
Okay, wow.
So if you got her just a little bit tipsy, she would whip it out and be the accompaniment to Happy Birthday or whatever the occasion was. So she was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But she did have this very deep and abiding passion for music. Was a regular at the National Arts Centre and was very committed to the idea of helping young people who wanted to be musicians.
Okay.
So actually, as early as the 1970s, she established this foundation. Originally with the idea, I think originally she wanted to see if she could help bring about a national school for Canada. There was at the time the National Ballet School, there was the National Theatre School in Montreal, and there was no National Music School.
Yeah.
And well, as we know, historically, that never happened for a whole bunch of reasons we won't go into here. But eventually, she settled on supporting young musicians through the Canada Council, which already, of course, had a very established system of support for individuals. So once a year, she would cut a check to them, and they would add it on to one of the grants that they were giving. And of course, there was very little required in the way of admin fees because they already had their administrative systems worked out. And so they had juries in place. So her grant came as a kind of top up to the best person in each competition.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that's how it started.
But since those days, the program has grown considerably. And I mean, so I think
Yeah.
you said that when
Yeah.
it first
So
started, it was one award per year, but now you're giving a lot more than that.
it was one or two awards per year.
Okay.
Then what happened is that on her death, she actually left the bulk of her estate to the foundation.
Okay.
And so the board had to figure out what to do
Yeah.
because there was suddenly quite a bit more money than the annual $15,000 or $20,000 that she used to give to the Canada Council.
Yeah.
And so the board, for various reasons, the board decided to run its own process. It didn't want to necessarily be constrained by some of the regulations in place at the Canada Council.
Mm-hmm.
And it knew that there would be a lot more money to give. And so they decided to make a go of it. And so in 2008 was the first year that we began giving awards under the auspices of the newly configured program.
Well, so speaking of process, what is the process for somebody to get a grant? Because that might not be obvious to people, and there's so many musicians, so many deserving musicians across the country, and also Canadians living outside of Canada as well. How do you narrow it down, and how do you select your grant winners?
Well, first of all, I have to say that we do not entertain applications from individuals just directly out of the blue. They have to be nominated by their school, wherever they're studying, or by a former teacher, a prominent musician that's kind of known.
Right.
So what happens is that every year around this time of year, I invite dozens of all the most prominent schools across North America and Europe. So all the university programs, Curtis Juilliard, the Mozarteum in Salzburg, the Guildhall School in London, the Royal Academy, all of these great schools get a letter from us saying, if you have Canadian students, you're entitled to nominate up to 3 to get one of these awards. And we send them the criteria, and so they know what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And we also send them a list of the past winners so they know what level we're pitching at, because we're pitching at a very high level.
Yeah.
So the nominations have to come, they have to pass through the dean or the principal's office. They don't just come from individual teachers, because somebody has to make sure, who are the 3 that are going to represent our school.
And this is, of course, across all disciplines. It's not just pianists or singers or violin players. It's everything.
It's all orchestral players and singers included. We get quite a lot of singers and have given a lot of grants to singers.
Yeah.
So generally what the deans will do is they will send out a note to all their staff and say, if you have anyone outstanding who happens to be Canadian, we can consider nominating them for this award. So we receive all of these annually, and we put together a kind of panel. We invite the nominees to submit, each of them about 45 minutes of music to us.
Yeah.
A variety of music. And we assemble a group of people to listen to all these tapes or videos, as the case may be. And it's a long process, and we winnow it down even further. So first of all, they pass through the eye of the needle of their principal, and now they're passing through this kind of pre-selection panel that we put together. And then the ones that survive that process are invited to come, all expenses paid, to a live audition. And we've been fortunate enough to be supported in this by the University of Ottawa, which gives us their premises, the Freeman Hall, and rehearsal rooms and so on. So we run these auditions generally over 3 days at the University of Ottawa. And as I say, we bring in people from wherever they are in the world. And if we need to put them up, we put them up and give them a stipend to have some meals with. And then they are submitted to this grueling exercise of performing for our jury.
So after all that, they end up in that.
Yeah, but I shouldn't say grueling, because it's usually a very wonderful, warm, and personal kind of experience. You've seen Freeman Hall; it's quite small at the University of Ottawa. It's a nice little performance space. And each candidate has roughly half an hour in front of the jury, and they are invited to play a selection, usually of about 3 things, or sing, as the case may be. We've had percussionists where the jury moves to another room where there's a full percussion set up. And they also get a chance to talk to the jury. So the jury will ask them questions about, what are your future plans? Where do you see yourself? What kind of contribution do you want to make to your profession? That sort of thing. So they get a really good sense of the full person.
Yeah.
And at the end of those 3 days, we have some really tough decisions to make, because by the time they reach us, they're already the crème de la crème.
And yes, you're already picking from the very best options.
Yeah. So we have the great privilege of seeing really the top young professionals coming out of this country generally. Now, maybe they don't all apply to us, but every year we get more and more and more, and word spreads. And so, we're seeing some really exceptional young people.
But I would encourage all the viewers this evening to take a look at the website for the foundation, which is www.silvagelber.ca. And you can look and you can see all the winners from 2020 all the way back to the first years that the awards were given. And it's quite an impressive list. It reads like a history of Canadian music in the latter half of the 20th century and the first part of this century. But could you maybe tell us, I don't know, one or two award winners, or maybe more that are doing interesting things around the world now? Do you have any particular stories or people?
Well, let me start with the very first one, who was John Kimura Parker. It's a name that most people watching this will know. He was the first person to receive a Silva Gelber Music Foundation Award when it was under the aegis of the Canada Council. Mm-hmm. And of course, Silva Gelber was alive at the time, and they became great friends. She corresponded with him. He kept in touch with her. She went to all of his concerts whenever he came to Ottawa. It became a very special relationship that she really treasured. And she had that kind of relationship with a number of young musicians. That's the one that I know about, because we've had some discussions with him subsequently. But in more recent years, since we took over the process and the program, in 2008, I think was the first year we began giving grants. And at the time it was about 4 grants, as I said, and now it's up to more than that. We've had an amazing parade of talent. So just off the top of my head, who can I think of? Nikki Chewy, who did a year as concertmaster at the Met, and now recently was, I know, the concertmaster at the Buffalo Symphony. I'm not sure if he's still there. His younger brother, Timmy Chewy, who had the distinction of making our jury members cry. He was so beautiful.
I remember seeing him play at the National Arts Centre last year, I think, with the NAC Orchestra, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto. He's spectacular. Yeah.
He's breathtaking. And both brothers are just sensational, exceptional people as well, which I would say applies to almost everybody who's had this award. They're wonderful people.
That makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And from this region, there's been a lot of talent. So I'm thinking Yolanda Bruno, whom you know well, Wallace Junta, Brian Chang, the cellist. More recently, a guy named Josh Lovell, who's with the Chicago Lyric Opera. Michael Bridge, who is, I think I'm right in saying, the only Canadian who has a PhD in accordion performance, which Silva would have loved.
Yeah.
She would have absolutely loved that, and she would have whipped out her harmonica to accompany him. And then the other really outstanding person I can think of recently, who, by the way, won the Walter Prostowski Prize this past year, as well as a grant from us, is a young mezzo-soprano named Emma Nikolovska, who is currently with the Berlin Opera and in their young opera group.
Yeah.
She's outstanding. She's beautiful, and she's really going to be something.
Well, and of course, 2 of your recent award winners as well are Amy Hillis and Meagan Milatz, who are playing for us this evening or this afternoon, depending on which concert this is.
I just want to say one thing to people viewing this.
Sure.
As a way of encouraging them to think about this. you know, Silva Gelber was not the world's wealthiest person. She left a, you know, a good-sized estate, but it now enables us to spend about $250,000 a year on giving grants to really deserving young artists.
Yeah.
And it just shows, you know, what one individual can do to make the world a better place, to make the world sing, to make the world, you know, hear music. So I just want to leave your listeners with that, because I think it's such a lovely thing that she left us all. And of course, her legacy continues. And Amy and Meagan are just such wonderful examples of the kind of thing I'm talking about. They're beautiful players, both of them, and lovely personalities. So I'm really looking forward to this concert.
Yeah, they're spectacular. And so, Barbara, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the concert as well.
I know I will. Thanks. Bye,
Okay.
Carson.
Well, David, my big question for you is, what was your inspiration for writing both the first violin and piano sonata? We can only play the first movement today, but if you want to focus on that one, great. And your inspiration for writing the serenade.
Oh, well, thank you very much for playing these. I've heard you play the sonata many times, and of course, I know you're recording. And I've never heard you play the serenade, so I'm so glad you're playing that. The sonata, the inspiration was I was doing a recital with Noel Laporte, and asked him, as I was wont to do in those early days. This is an early piece from the 90s, I think, sometime in the early 90s. And I often would ask, if I was doing a recital with someone, I'm a pianist, for those of you who don't know, if I wrote a piece for them, will you play it with me? And so Noel very kindly agreed to play this piece, whatever it was going to be that I wrote for him. So that was the motivation. And I found that was a good way to, when I was younger, to get pieces out there to be heard. And also it was great fun working with the artists. I love, you asked what the inspiration is. For me, the ultimate inspiration is always the people I'm working with. So so Noel was my inspiration. He was the one that I was listening to. I was hearing his violin playing. We played together a bit, and so of course I was asking him all kinds of violin questions that I might have had, and was very excited to be able to work with a pianist. At that time, I think Noel was probably concertmaster here in Regina, and it was fun. So the first movement, I can't remember exactly, that's a while ago now, but just the spirit of the piece kind of sets something at the beginning, you know, when it begins with the piano being quite declamatory there, and then the violin coming in. It's sort of setting up a sense of occasion. But to me, the music, almost all the music I write, it has something to do with a journey. I find that a very nice analogy, to think of traveling through a piece of music as traveling through a landscape and seeing different things along the way. And as you travel, whether by train or by car or by bike or walking, things change, your perspective changes. And that's always, to me as a musician, the interesting thing, how the body changes and reacts in order to produce either very energetic sounds or things that are more gentle, you know, so just all those emotional contrasts that come into play mirror traveling through a landscape to me.
Thank you. And for the serenade, your inspiration.
Oh yes, the serenade again was written for people that I know very well. It was my uncle, who was my first piano teacher, and my aunt, who was a violinist, still is a violinist. They still play together. They live in California now, but it was for their 50th anniversary. I think I wrote this little serenade for them as a little gift, and so that's what that was about. My aunt, by the way, Amy, studied with Howard Layton Brown.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Another heavyweight violinist from Regina.
Yes.
And I'm not in any way saying in my category, I meant like Noel Laporte, very much one of those people I looked up to when I was growing up.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I remember the first time, I was thinking about this morning, the first time I met Howard would have been at my aunt and uncle's wedding. And I, at that time, was 7 years old.
Wow.
And so this piece the serenade was written in 2007, which was, I guess, 50 years after that wedding. So of course, I didn't meet him again until I moved to Regina many years later. But yeah.
That's amazing. So David, did you ever get a chance to perform the serenade yourself? for your aunt and uncle? Was there a big celebration that you?
No, but they have performed it.
Okay.
No, in fact, I haven't seen them in person for quite a while. Actually, I think the last time, it was probably about 10 years ago. My uncle came up for my 60th birthday here to Canada, but I haven't been down to see them for years in the States. And so we just talk on the phone basically. And
okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I personally, I love the fact that your music is based so much on these relationships that you have with people, which is, I know for both Amy and I, such an important part of music making. And it's cool that comes right from the genesis of these compositions that we're performing of yours. So thanks so much for everything you shared with us. And we look forward to exploring more of your compositions and sharing your music with more and more audiences.
Thank you so much. It gives me great pleasure to hear you play.
Thank you, David. So nice to see you.
Hey everyone, thanks very much for being here today. It is truly a pleasure to play for you. Meagan and I have really missed being able to perform together, and this live concert, knowing that you were watching at home, knowing that you are perhaps hearing something different, and that we have the privilege of sharing these fabulous composers with you, ones that are both familiar like Mozart and perhaps maybe unfamiliar to some of you. So from David McIntyre in Saskatchewan, we're actually going to go back. We were in the United States before with Amy Beach, so we're going to return to the United States and actually to the South, because the next composer was from Arkansas. Her name was Florence Price, and she was a particularly notable composer, not only because she was a female composer at the beginning of the 20th century, so this piece that we're about to play, she wrote in 1933, but she was also the first female composer and the second Black composer to have her work performed by a major symphony orchestra. So the reason why we wanted to program her works to finish off our concert today is because we loved this style of synthesizing two worlds, particularly in the case of Florence Price, the classical world. She was classically trained. She went to the New England Conservatory of Music, and you'll hear that in this next work. For example, it starts with the big romantic cadenza from the Romantic Concerto period in classical music. It has sonata form. It's very much written in the classical style, but she also integrates African American spirituals and themes from these soulful works that were sung and brought down from generation to generation. And the reason why we wanted to include this in our concert today was because there's something about this soulful music, not only in its origin, but also in its feel and its character. And for us as musicians, it was food for our souls, especially during a rather a difficult year, and one where I think we take lots of comfort and warmth from being with each other, even if that means through a camera. So thank you again for being here today. We are now going to play Fantasy No. 1 for violin and piano by Florence Price.
before we perform our last set of pieces for you this afternoon, we would like to extend a huge heartfelt thank you to the Pontiac Enchanté Concert Series here in Louisville. Thank you so much to all of the team that helped make this happen, including Carson and Tate Becca, as well as their parents, Peter and Debbie, for hosting. And a huge thanks again to the wonderful sound engineer that provided the sound coming through your speakers. That's Ross Murray. We would also like to thank the Silva Gelber Music Foundation for their support. They are also the reason why this concert could happen this afternoon, and we are so, so grateful. Thank you so much.
And I also want to thank the Canada Council for the Arts. The instrument that I'm playing today, and in fact have been playing for the past year and a half, but have been on hiatus from live concerts, so he feels really good to be in the live concert setting as well. But it is a generous loan from the Canada Council for the Arts Musical Instrument Bank, so thank you for that loan. And last but not least, we want to thank all of you for tuning in today, for supporting live music, even if it's virtual, and for sharing in this event with us, for being open to hearing new works, and for your support. Thank you again for being here, and we're going to finish with 3 spirituals by Florence Price. These were arranged by her for violin and piano, and the 3 spirituals are called O Holy Lord, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, and we'll finish with Lord, I Want to Be a Christian. Thanks very much. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.